Welcome to the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we talk about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny. Adam is currently on travel, and today we have a very special guest. He is actually one of the newest members of the Spark Partners team. His name is Brendan Staib. Hello, Brendan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. And so I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing to have Brendan here on the podcast to introduce him to the audience, but also to get his perspective. Believe it or not, we can learn a lot by the up and coming generation. He's currently at the University of Arizona, and from a demographics perspective, Brendan here represents the up and coming market, who we are selling to. Even if we're in different generations, understanding the up and coming generation is very important for marketing perspective, for building the right products. So tell us about yourself, Brendan. Tell us how you got to Arizona, and let's go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a sophomore at U of A right now. I'm studying finance. This is my first semester in the actual business college, so getting all my business classes going. And then this last summer, while I was working, I decided to start like a little side hustle thing, doing digital marketing and copywriting and stuff like that, and just joining all sorts of courses and trying to learn marketing and all that stuff. So yeah, and then you eventually reached out to me for this project that we're doing right now. So obviously, that's why I'm here today. And yeah.
Yeah. So, at Spark Partners, we talk about a lot of trends, but the ones that we talk about the most are AI, the gig economy, asynchronous life, mobility, the environment, demographics, and those are the kind of the top 5 or 6. I think that you represent in this activity that we're involved with right now, at least 4 of those immediately,
Hmm.
right? You are a gig worker. We're paying you as a gig worker.
Yep.
You are using AI to help us to create content and manage content and edit the content and produce the content.
Hmm.
Asynchronous life. So we're communicating asynchronously. That means I'm sending you a text message, and then 5 or 10 or 50 minutes later, you're returning my message, and we're doing it that way. And then demographics, kind of what I started off with, is you represent the 20-year-olds that are up and coming into the market. So understanding the trends is really powerful. I would say in your life, Brendan, where do you see of the trends I just mentioned, maybe other trends, where do you see the most activity from your generation?
Definitely AI. Like even for me, I use ChatGPT specifically for almost all of my school assignments, and I know everybody else does too, because it makes the workflow so much faster, and it's also so much easier to just get ideas and to just get started with something. Like for me, I use it. Let's say I'm writing a report or just a paper or something like that. I was actually doing this earlier. I'll just plug in like the prompt my teacher gives me for the assignment, and then I'll plug it into ChatGPT, and then put like I want it to sound like this. I want it to have this sort of writing style, and then it'll give me this whole thing. And I don't usually just copy and paste it all because it's not like my voice. I go through the whole thing and make sure it matches my voice. But yeah, almost probably everyone I know uses ChatGPT for schoolwork. And then for what we're doing also, I was using this, Dolly is one of the newer ones for this is also ChatGPT for picture generation. And I know there's a couple for video generation. I'm not too familiar with those, but
Okay.
Dolly's really good. Same type of structure. You just give it a prompt, you know, edit it, tell it to do this, tell it to do that. And yeah, it usually pumps out pretty good output. So
Interesting. So let me ask you this. So with respect to you using these tools in your classrooms, are your professors, would you say they're not allowing it, they're indifferent, or they're allowing it, or they're encouraging it? Which one of those 4 would you say that they're doing to with this AI in particular?
it sort of depends on the professor. So I guess as a in general, they like people using AI as long as you're not just taking all of the ideas it generates you and just putting that into your work and just turning that in. So they want you to they're from my experience at least, they want you to take the ideas that the AI gives you and then put that in your own words, kind of like what I was explaining before, and then put your own spin on it. So it's still your work, but you're just using the AI to help you. But I've had some teachers too that say probably shouldn't use it at all, and they want you to avoid it because they feel like it's sort of cheating the system, I guess, if you just put a prompt into AI and it spits all this out for you. But yeah, it's pretty indifferent for the most part.
Okay. I think there's probably just a shift that's happening right now. I mean, you grew up in a time where there was always smartphones, there was
Mhm.
always the internet, there was always access to tons of data at your fingertips. I'm a different generation, right? I'm at least two away from you. There's you're Gen Z, then there's millennial, then there's Gen X. I'm
Yeah.
Gen X, and for us, we had rotary telephones. We had no. I mean, I grew up during the advent of the cell phone. Like I remember these giant brick cell phones that you would carry around,
Mhm.
and you could. I mean, there was no towers, so you couldn't even use them anywhere.
Yeah.
And I just remember going through, even in school for me, we had calculators, these really fancy scientific calculators, which are ubiquitous now. Everybody's got them. But during my day, there was a time when professors would not allow you to use them. And then now I think that almost all math teachers almost encourage you to use these tools.
Mhm.
Is that your kind of your sense as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And I actually, you talking about that made me remember a story my grandpa told me. Maybe I think it was over this summer. So he in college, he kind of had a similar experience where he was he was an accounting major, so he's doing like math and sorts of stuff like that, like statistics, all that sort of stuff. He was doing his like accounting homework and or he was in the accounting classes, and that was right when the calculator was being made, so, all the teachers were like trying to or he had this calculator now and he could just do all this so easily. And the teachers were kind of saying something similar to that, where, they probably don't want you to use that because it's like a cheat code or whatever. But yeah, I feel like that's for me personally, I've always had cell phones, like you said. So it's kind of just been like a part of my life. I guess AI is the first major thing that has really it's like new to me and I'm still like learning it as everyone else is. And that's still in its beginning stages. So I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. And
Yeah, it's very
yeah.
exciting. And I think that the real challenge has to do with the idea of your world shifting. For some of these professors, they don't know how to grapple, I would imagine, with this new technology. They don't know how to deal with it. And there's always that generation or that type of person that's going to push back. And I think they mean well. They mean to do. They're not trying to be sort of bad or evil about it. They mean well, but they don't understand it, and they don't understand the power of it. And
Mhm.
if my mother can text now and she's on ordering stuff on Amazon and she's gone crazy, just 5 years ago she couldn't text. And I mean, she had the technology, she just didn't have that mindset. And now that she's on
Mhm.
social media and it's a way different world. And I think if we see it in that mindset, it'll actually help to grow and expand awareness, grow and expand relationships. And I think you're a good example of having seen the rise of AI. What people don't understand is AI has been around for a long time, not just now, but now all that hard work that's gone into the development of these large language models or whatever are actually coming to the market. So let me ask you, let's kind of shift gears a little bit and let's talk about how you're in your business school. Um, how would you say your classmates make decisions when they buy something? This is something that I always am very curious about because generations buy things in different ways. And let
Right.
me give you an example of just real high level the way that at least two generations buy stuff. We'll say actually three. So my grandfather always had a Cadillac. And the reason he always had a Cadillac is because he always had a Cadillac. That was his thing. You were brand loyal, and he would go from 1 year Cadillac to the next year, and that was just his thing. And for him to go over to a Lincoln was almost unheard of because he was a Cadillac guy. And there was the whole thing about Ford or Chevy back in the day, all that. I think my generation, so even my mom, and sort of, I'm kind of in the mix there with being a Gen Z. She's kind of a boomer, and her generation is more a little bit less of that, but more about what's the value. My generation was all about consumer reports and what is the best bang for the buck. What does everybody else say is good for there's a third party group that would test this. I don't know if you even know what Consumer Reports is, but there was a magazine called Consumer Reports that would tell you, okay, we tested these different cars and we gave this one this grade and this other one this other grade. So we would gravitate towards the one that had the highest marks. And I think the millennial generation is very much influenced on what's everybody else driving. So I'm curious to see how people in your generation make decisions, say to buy a car, to buy something that is maybe bigger than just a bag of potato chips.
Yeah, I think status is the first thing that came to my head when you asked that. So, especially with social media nowadays, people care so much about how others perceive them. So, let's say you're making a big purchase like a car or something like that. You want the car that's going to perceive or make other people perceive you as the highest status or like high value, if that makes sense.
Which is, so I didn't prompt you with this. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. So there's a great book that has actually been condensed to a pretty manageable article in HBR, which I've subscribed to for many years. It's called Generations. And it talks about there's 4 different kinds of generations and they all repeat. So in a matter of speaking, your generation is the same generation as my grandfather's generation, and how they buy is very similar. And so you just kind of like talked about the reason my grandfather bought a Cadillac was exactly what you said, status. He wanted to be known as the guy, right? And he was brand loyal only because it was a high status thing. And I think you just illustrated that. How much would you say the social media influencers have influence over your generation's buying patterns?
I think it's a massive influence, at least just in my life. The people that I listen to have pretty much formed the actions that I take on a day-to-day basis in my life. So I think for me, I listen to people like, Hormozy, just people like that we've talked about, people like self-help people. And that has helped me so much to like align my life with what I really want to do and shifting my mindset to focus on growth and actually like really building something with my life. And I feel like that's a huge part of your life now, like nowadays in the social media era. Because, people always say you're a sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And I feel like now that we have social media and we have instant access to, pretty much everyone, that is part of that. The people that you listen to online is part of I guess, that network that you have and that forms you and makes you the type of person that you are, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And one of the things we talked about early on in Spark Partners when I joined Adam and began this basic podcast journey is that everybody in this day, every company this day and age, whatever size, whatever industry, whatever market, has to become a media company. They have to become a media company if they want to compete. And we're talking about like global or even regional competition, we're not talking about some like corner muffin shop. That might be, I mean, unless they want to grow, unless they want to expand. But I think you have to become a media company, and that means that somebody that I buy glasses from, Foster Grant in particular, has to have a massive social media outlet. They've got to have influencers, and they have to have videos, and they have to have all that social media presence because they want to sell their glasses, right? And
Mhm.
so my I guess my next prediction or my next sort of thing to say with regards to that is that we all have to become some level of a social media personality. And there's a lot of people in social media. There's a lot more that are lurking than that are actually producing content. But all the stuff that Gary Vee talks about, even if you're producing it to 5 followers, you just need to be continuously pushing on that, because eventually, if you want to grow, if you want to expand, if you want to be known, you've got to have that social media presence. So let me
Mhm.
ask you a question that's sort of regarding that, but maybe on the flip side. Do you have any personal experience with somebody you know? It could be even you or somebody close to you that has had a really bad situation with social media, whether it be bullying or some picture got leaked and got posted everywhere. Have you had any experience with that in your day?
Not entirely. Not something major, at least from the people that, at least my friends and me, I haven't seen anything like really major that someone's that's like something's gotten leaked or something along the lines of that. But just I guess basic stuff like you accidentally post something that you didn't want other people to see. Like just messing around with your friends or something and you just post something that they probably wouldn't want everyone to see on their Instagram or whatever.
Right.
So nothing really major, but yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is, so I have to really cross and have to be aware of the social media presence of whoever I hire or whoever I work with. And one of the first things I do when I hire somebody, and this is kind of and I'll kind of explain why this is an interesting thing. So we talk a lot about bias at Spark Partners. So one of the things that you when you receive a resume, that a lot of people do immediately is they go look at their social media platform. Who is this person? What are they all about? Let me look at their LinkedIn. And so what happens is we automatically start to form a bias on that person, because we see that what they're doing in their social media platform. We see that they maybe like the same kind of car we do, or they're on the other side of the political spectrum than we are. And so we're already biased when we talk to them. And so we make these really bad decisions about working with somebody because we like them. And that is hard for a lot of leaders to really grapple with, that they have to like everybody they work with. And the truth be told, if you really want to run an effective organization, you have to surround yourself with the most competent people you can, irrespective if you like them or not. It's really hard for people to hear that, but that's the truth. So now what I do, and you're kind of a rare exception because I found you on LinkedIn, but if I receive a resume, I try not to look at their social media presence until at least I've had one conversation on the phone. I don't like to have face-to-face conversations because then again, forms are bias. If they're somebody that is just way different than me, I might be curious, or might be forming a bias about that. Or if they're somebody who's just like me, same thing. So that's just something to say for those business leaders out there is, if you're going to receive a resume, really hold off on having that, look at their qualifications, make that phone call, set up that phone call, see what they're all about, and then go to the social media presence to see if they're whatever, they're going to support your values and your mission.
Yeah,
Uh,
and to add on to that, I feel like some people don't understand that, or they don't just realize when they're looking at someone's social media that it's what they want other people to see. So it's what they think is gonna make other people like think that they're the highest status, like I said earlier. So it's you can't really judge someone entirely on their social media because it's not a complete accurate representation of them and who they are.
100%, 100. I saw a couple a few months back. I was at a dinner, and they were at an adjacent table, and they were but bickering. They were probably in their mid to late 20s. They were bickering about something, and they were basically having this like little mini fight a couple tables down. And
Mhm.
then at some point in time, they sort of like they got over that, or they were somehow able to purge that enough to do a quick social media post. You can tell that they were hugging and kissing and all this with the selfie situation. They put their phones down and they started fighting again. And I just thought to myself, that is a classic example of somebody just painting this picture that they want the world to see. But in
Yeah.
fact, they're not all, lovey dovey all the time. And they're presenting this other feature that is sort of just what they want the world to see.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
let me ask you another question. Again, going off of one of our other main trends, and that trend has to do with the environment. And so again, at Spark Partners, we don't get into the politics. We kind of don't really like to do that, but occasionally we have to because it has to do with your business. And in the case of global warming, the climate change, whether you believe that it's man-made or not, it doesn't matter because there's enough people that do believe that it's here that as a business owner, you have to care. Same
Yeah.
thing with all the stuff happening with gender identity, whether you believe it's your own personal values or not, all these, because you are running a business, especially if you want to scale and grow, you have to be aware that it's beyond your personal beliefs, which is hard for a lot of people to hear. Me being kind of a staunch libertarian, it's not a big deal, like, live and let live. But let me ask you this. So you grew up in a time when the environment was always an issue, correct?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And what would you say in your classes today, and actually since you were, we'll say, in kindergarten until now, how much of that narrative about saving the environment was part of your growing up? And I guess it's maybe hard to imagine it not being there, but do your best to think about how much of that was pushed on you as a kid growing up.
Yeah, like you said, it's always one of those issues that you just keep seeing in the news, like, it always resurfaces, and I think especially with the environment thing, the at least the stuff you see on the news, it's usually, like, getting worse and, like, showing statistics of it getting worse and stuff like that. I can't really imagine a world without, I guess, dealing with those problems, if that makes sense. I couldn't really see it. I guess maybe nowadays it could be more of a thing where people are finally noticing that it's an impact
Right.
instead of like it's been going on for a while, but now it's actually we're seeing implications from it and we're seeing the impact of the just negative effects on the environment and we're finally seeing results from that in real time. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it goes back to the bias. So how we grow up, where we grow up, with whom we grow up, all these things have implications on forming your bias. And as an entrepreneur, as somebody who runs a company, as somebody who's building brands and doing what I do, it's super hard to remove myself from myself. And this goes for you and our listeners as well. When you're looking at marketing a product or service, you really have to think like you have to get out of that box, then think. You can't be in the same box and think outside the box. You got to figure out a way to get yourself out of that box. And so you can make better decisions. And that's very hard for a lot of our listeners and business people to do. And
And
so that kind of brings me to a question regarding your family. Tell us about your family. Tell us about kind of the kind of things that you like to do, and tell us about your growing up in Denver.
yeah, so my dad is a financial planner. He has his own retirement planning company and he's been doing that for around 20 years now, I think. So that's as long as I've been alive, he's been running that business. And then I also have two siblings, both older than me. Um, my brother graduated from Old Miss. He went through their accounting program, and then my sister's also here at U of A, and she's studying speech pathology. And then my mom, she was always just stay-at-home mom. She stayed with me, and my parents had this thing going on where my dad was working and bringing in the money, and my mom was kind of helping my siblings with all the basics, chores and stuff like that. So pretty much a traditional household where the father's bringing in the money and the mother's caring for the children and helping them do all this stuff like that. So
That's very interesting, and it goes back to your bias, right? The bias that you have in your brain versus the one in mine versus all of the listeners we have and viewers. They're all going to be different. I mean, you grew up in a very sounds like a traditional quote unquote nuclear family, and
mhm.
very sort of like you mentioned, your dad was earning the money, your mom was at home. But not a lot of people grew up that way. And so if you're marketing something, if you're selling a business or selling to individuals, that makes a lot of difference how you market. And right now, there's a lot of things going on. And, we talk about there's a sort of general doomsday approach to where we are today, especially with the pandemic. A lot of people feel as though like we're going to hell in a handbasket and everything's going terribly wrong and all these things are happening. But if you really look at the numbers, we're the happiest, the most healthy, believe it or not, than we've ever been. We, even though there's this trade war and this other looming war with China and there's stuff happening in Ukraine and all this stuff, it's still tiny compared to what it was even 25, 30, 40 years ago. And
Right.
so I remind all the people I speak with on a daily basis that are in my business domain that right now there's so much opportunity, so much wealth being created that it takes that mindset of getting out of that negativity. And people say have a positive mindset, and it really matters because if you see the world as gloom and doom, then you're going to paint everything you see with that same brush. And so I would say that your generation has a lot of information you're processing. I mean, how many social media accounts do you have? 4, 5?
At least, yeah.
Right. And how many do you listen? Do you ever watch TV or listen to the traditional news or no?
Occasionally from time to time, but not regularly, no. I usually just get my news from those sources.
Exactly. And of those sources, are they sort of brand name sources? Are they CNNs of the world? Or are they more esoteric, more individualized sort of news outlets?
They're more towards the, like, end of the world side where everyone's panicking and everyone's saying, "This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong," all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah. So, how do you feel? This is actually an interesting topic that we're talking about. So, how do you sift through that in your own daily life? You're getting all these social media posts about there's ones people say don't buy a home, they're not a good investment. You get that's like the Grant Cardone side, and you get other people that say buy a home and invest in it, and that's your biggest asset. And so how do you sift through that for your own sanity?
Yeah, I think for the most part, and being honest, it's mainly the person who's saying the thing more than the information that's being said. So I'm gonna be a lot more likely to believe someone that I continuously watch and the like if I see an Alex Hormozy video, like I said, of him saying something like that, I'm probably gonna believe it just because he's helped me, he's provided value to me, and I already have this kind of trust in my mind built with him and the stuff that he says. So it's pretty much who says the thing that, in my opinion, makes what most people believe is true and what's not true.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant way of saying it. I think we all have that in our daily lives, and I think as we all grew up, I grew up with the news. Like CNN was created and sort of launched in my lifetime.
Mhm.
Um, the sort of like the 10 o'clock news or whatever, the morning news, was always kind of there since the TV's been around. But the newspaper was a bigger deal back then than it is now. And so it's interesting that you can really make a huge splash in your with your followers, but you have to have the followers. Uncle
Yeah.
G, as he calls himself, Grant Cardone. I went to an event a number of years ago, and one thing he says that I always remember: if people don't know you, they can't flow you, they can't cash flow you, and that has to do with awareness. But awareness is sort of it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you've got to create awareness, but you have to have something that you're selling that's worth people buying, which goes back to the premise of Spark Partners, because we're all about growth. And the only way to really grow your business is to sell more, but you have to sell more of what people want to buy.
Mhm.
So, and that people want to buy part, that has to do with trends. And so I think it's brilliant. I think it's an amazing time we're living in. And so, what other final thoughts do you have for us, Brendan, here as we sort of wrap up the podcast regarding your opportunity to be with the Spark Partners team, or maybe how you see your school sort of experience expanding by being part of us, and tell us about your thoughts there.
Yeah, so I guess going back to that last topic, I just wanted to add something real quick.
Sure.
I feel like it just it stresses the importance of, I guess, like you said, providing value to people and giving stuff that people actually want, because so many people want to build a social media presence nowadays and they want to be famous on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, or whatever, that they just post stuff that they think would work or that they think would like make people laugh, give people value. And I think it just makes it more important to, like you said, put yourself in the shoes of the people that you're talking to and actually make sure that you're tailoring a message for them and that you're providing genuine value to other people. So,
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. And I
mm,
think that there's a lot of things that are being studied. So business as an application space that people study, as a knowledge base, as a subject in school, has only been taught for about 100 years, and not even fully 100 years ago. It was more called economics, and there's other pieces of that have existed for a long time. But business, as we know it today, has never been studied as much as it has today. I mean, marketing, psychology, brand awareness, branding. I mean, we are understanding so many things about the human mind that applies to the wallet and how we make decisions. And I talked about HBR earlier. I went back to my stack of HBR books here, my magazine, and there's so much information in these that is just mind blowing. And so one of the things we're going to be doing now with Spark Partners is creating lots of content that will add value to the business owner, and coming from being a business leader today and running the company, and also having built my previous business, growing it, and then basically shutting it down. That was my PhD. That taught me so many things. And one thing I
mhm,
want to do, the reason I joined Adam and the reason that you're here and that we do this once a week, is because I want to empower the business leaders of today and tomorrow with the right tools so that they can make the better decisions than I did to then grow their business. And of course, I'm taking my own medicine too. I mean, I'm growing a business now and I'm doing other things, helping others grow their business with my coaching and all that. But it's just, it's good to see that you've joined our team, and I'm excited at what we do in the next coming time here together to grow the awareness of Spark Partners.
mhm. Well, thank you for having me on, Manny.
Absolutely. Well, good to connect here. We'll be talking to you soon. With that, we'll talk to you later. Cheers.